Welcome back to Fast Intelligent Care. This is our part 3 of our 4-part series with Lizzy Parsons, occupational therapist and solution specialist from Country Care Group. So now we're going to talk about manual handling, so hoists, slings, and transfer aids. So first thing I want to ask you, Lizzy, is slings. I know slings is probably, from what I've heard from OTs, probably the most scary and intimidating thing to prescribe. Can be quite overwhelming. So what are some of the tips or things that you would advise for an OT when they have a request for a sling?
Well, firstly, I'd make sure that you trial the sling. I think trials are super important with slings. It's not really a case of just guesstimating the right size and then seeing if that, and then that's okay for the client. There's quite a lot of factors that go into selecting a sling, and I think a lot of people forget that. We see it here a lot where people just ring up and say, or we say that we need a sling, and then we say, oh, what size? And then they're like, oh, maybe a medium. And they don't really know. I'm just going to guesstimate this person's a medium size. And you know what? Like sometimes that works. But if you want to kind of make sure it really works, understanding the person's body type and whether they're going to suit that certain sling. And obviously that a lot of slings actually have measurement guides with them. So it's finding out, I think, firstly from the healthcare equipment supplier, what slings they actually supply. Because we do different ones to other companies. And then we can provide you with that measurement form or measurement list so that you can then make sure that the client's measured appropriately for the sling. The great thing that you guys do is obviously you've got the compatibility kind of worksheet, which assists you with people's body types and things like that, and whether that sling's going to be suitable or not. I think that's really useful. And me personally, I've been using the app that you guys have with relation to the slings as well, because it's just been able to narrow down your product range and what sling is going to be most appropriate for someone. Because there are lots of questions, in terms of people's weight, measurements, body type, whether they have high or low tone, whether they need head support, not head, all those things that kind of come into play. And I think a lot of people forget all those things and they just guess on the size.
And if I remember correctly, I think last time I saw you when we did some manual handling training or transfer aid prescription training with OTs, we had a chat about the compatibility of slings with hoists and how it's being important to check as well, like if it's a clip attachment versus a loop attachment. Necessary, not just assuming that it's going to be compatible, but that's, I guess, where you come with your trial as well and actually see if it is safe enough to use.
Yeah, because there's a few different slings, obviously, for different lifter types, and making sure that, that's correct. If no one's trained on these things here as well in store, then that can be dangerous too, right? Things are going out and they're not compatible. So, yeah, compatibility is super important. And having those resources that we have and you guys have to help the OT select the right sling is great. And I think OTs just need to ask for those as well, right? Because I don't even know if a lot of them know that they exist. But again, the importance of having that kind of good relationship with your healthcare equipment supplier, that, you can ask these kind of questions. Yeah. And it's okay to say that you're not particularly confident in this area. And is there any resources that we can provide, to give them more confidence?
Something that I find with the slings in terms of sizing as well is you sometimes actually end up trialing 2 different sizes.
Yeah.
She's got for they would fit into the medium, so just go for the medium. But it always helps to have that options there. So like you said, you can ask the questions, do they need a hygiene sling, but bringing out those other options there for in case it doesn't work. Right, at least your settings up a bit of trough.
Yeah, and I've also found like even if people don't need head support, if they get a hygiene sling with head support, sometimes that extra material does assist a bit in someone's comfort or a security within, using a hygiene sling as well. It just adds a little bit more material to the sling. But yeah, it's the hygiene sling is a tricky one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what would your take on it if someone did need a hygiene sling? Like what are the other options if the hygiene sling doesn't work?
So there's usually two things that I kind of refer them to. So there are some universal slings that have a bit of a bigger commode aperture. It's not really as much as the hygiene sling for clothing removal, but it is a little bit easier to remove it a little bit for toileting. So universal slings, like one of the ones we have is the multi-effect click sling.
Yeah.
Technically general purpose and hygiene sling. But I usually say if someone, the idea of the hygiene sling is clothing removal. If you can't use that hygiene sling, best is then to remove clothing while they're on the bed. And they use something like a mesh sling that maybe is a bit easier to clean and dry very quickly. Something that I don't like about the mesh slings is the material can cause a bit of, like if someone's skin's very sensitive.
Irritated.
Yeah, it can be texture. So that's where I do like the multi-foot thing that has like the slide sheet material in it. But yeah, it is a bit of a trickier situation when you're not able to do a hygiene thing. You end up using a general purpose sling that has a decent enough commode aperture, but they need hand. And I always just say put like a towel or something over there and laugh or something to just give them that dignity.
I was gonna say dignity is like a massive thing, right? Like imagine being hoisted up in a sling without your pants on.
Yeah.
Like in front of everyone, like it's just awful, isn't it? Like just it's not a nice situation for anyone. I think that's where some of those like modesty loops and stuff are good as well, so the legs aren't kind of splaying out as they come up. But yeah, it's hard, isn't it? But yeah, I think, as carers, I think it's really important to try and keep people's dignity and as a priority, and I think that's another thing I've noticed around people hoisting, lifting people. It's one of those things that they're obviously having to do all the time. So it's something they're doing every day. It's just, the course of the course. And I think they forget that they're actually lifting a person in the lifter. And I've seen it before where just like no communication happens with that person when they're being lifted. No, they don't have any part in it. And I think it is important to remember, like, I know it's a day-to-day thing and like people just kind of get used to it. I think it's still important to make sure that person is comfortable when they're being lifted up, that that person feels safe when they're being moved. And how important it is to set the room up and prepare it prior to the lifting happening. Because time and time again, I've been out where someone's left a wheelchair in another room somewhere and that's what they need to get into. And then they've lifted the person up and then the person's just hanging there while the person has to run off and get the wheelchair. So yeah, important that everything is ready and in place so you can do kind of a quick and efficient transfer.
Yeah, and that's helping to reduce any hoisting accidents as well, making sure not having the person suspended in the air for longer than they have to be.
Yes, that's right. I think a lot of the things I've also seen is around sling application as well and sling removal, and that people are in a rush. They just reef the sling from underneath the person. Talk about, shearing on people's skin and things like that. Sometimes people can be, pretty brutal when they're putting slings on and taking them off as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I've seen a lot as well, as the case where people don't want to have to take the sling in and out because it's so difficult. And then they just keep it underneath the client, and that's also, we know, for pressure care not ideal because that's taking away from the effectiveness of your pressure care cushion. So actually, something that we haven't talked much about is hoists and, let's say, stand aids. Have you come across any common problems with hoisting and using standing aids? So something like a standing hoist, maybe even things that work really well. So trials that have gone really well.
Yeah, some of the things I've seen or heard of here as well is once someone, like an OT, prescribes a piece of equipment for someone, a lot of the kind of support workers and carers will then just use that piece of equipment. But I sometimes feel they're not confident enough if they think that things aren't going quite right to raise it. Because there's something might have changed within that person, right? That they can't hold themselves. They're losing their core a little bit more or something like that. And the lifter that they're using just isn't as appropriate anymore. So, for example, there was a gentleman that we had who was using a standing lifter, and they'd been using it with him for years, but gradually he'd been starting to lose his core control, and he hadn't got as much strength in his legs. So when he was standing, he was starting to kind of lean to the side. But because that piece of equipment had been recommended by an OT, like the support workers and things, obviously just kept using it, and he kept going off slowly to the side. And he was quite a heavy gentleman, and unfortunately one day actually tipped. Yeah. And and the excuse was, well, this was the lifter that was prescribed, but I think it's important that support workers and carers have such an important job. They see the people every day. They see the people more than the OTs do. And so I think it's important, when OTs go out and do lifter and sling training and things like that, to really have a good relationship with those support workers, and make sure that they're aware of the things to look out for if things start going south, and that the OT needs to come in and do another assessment, because that could have been picked up sooner. One of those support workers could have put their hand up and said, look, I think this is getting a bit dangerous. Do you think we should bring someone in to check whether this is the right lifter anymore? So yeah, and we haven't gotten much say over what happens with support workers and carers out in the community, but I think it's important that when we go out and see these people, that we're speaking with the carers and support workers as well, to get as much information from them in terms of how people are being lifted and things like that. Yeah,
very true. They're a very great resource. Like you said, they're with them every single day. They're doing the lifting, or they're using the equipment. So it's almost like a common thing actually with any assisted tech, is that you don't just stop after a successful trial and prescription. It's that review, continuous review. It's maybe the perfect product or equipment for them at this point in time, but
yeah,
maybe I could trade a lot.
Yeah. And also a lot of I feel like OTs obviously are with a client for that specific time with that equipment prescription, and then that's it. Then they'll, and you won't be called up again unless there is an issue, or an issue has occurred. I wonder if it's, important whether, something does get put in place where someone has a yearly, even though nothing's come up, whether just a yearly review with clients just to go in and just see how they're being lifted or how they're using their recliner lift chair, or how, there might be things that other people obviously haven't picked up being with them on a daily basis, which an occupational therapist would turn around and say, oh, that's not good, but there isn't that process in place. So, clients can be left for 3 or 4 years before they see another OT. And it's usually because a problem has occurred. Just a thought.
Yeah, being a little bit more proactive with it. Yeah, that's actually a really good idea. Like that it should be almost like when you actually start looking at the product trials or looking at prescribing the product, that you almost have in place in your therapy plan that this is something that I'm set to review within a year.
Yeah.
Come hell or high water, I will review it. Yeah, okay or not, I will.
Or even if it's not, you might not be around in that position in a year or something, but even like the clients, the people who are associated with that client, that they think, oh, it's about time that person should just have another OT review and make sure we're all still safe and good.
Yeah.
Just might prevent a few things. Because usually we don't get involved until something goes wrong,
Yeah. I guess that's where like initial education's probably, like you said, that because it's not going to always be the same OT. That initial education with the client and the family members or the caregivers, they're probably going to be a lot more consistent than the rest of the support team, like the therapist potentially or equipment suppliers, is going to be the client themselves and their family members. So they are aware what's needed to make sure that it's maintained properly.
Yeah.
Well, I think with something I've come across with manual handling quite often is like you said, I think you mentioned earlier as well, the kind of resistance to the product, because it is something that the client themselves doesn't like because it's being done to them. Negative connotation to it that I have no control. I don't have the dignity. It's very foreign experience. In some cases, it is can be very uncomfortable. So it is a very sensitive.
Yeah, it is, especially the hoists. Like you say, people hang there and they feel really like exposed, like it's and out of control. Yeah, vulnerable. It's not nice. It is a tricky one when it comes to manual handling. I think a lot of people as well, because it takes time as well to put a sling on, to lift the person up, to then put them in a wheelchair, to then wheel them to the lounge area, to then lift them back up, to then put them in the recliner chair. Like, people are just like, this takes too long. There's too many, so I can see why people take shortcuts.
Yeah.
Or want to take shortcuts. But, as OTs, we know what process is the safest. And we can only advise. But yeah, I can see the frustrations.
What is the advice that you would give to OTs that are struggling with a client being resistant to, let's say, a standing hoist or hoist being brought in to their world? I think
it's a good idea to talk to other OTs, right? Like, I think sometimes spend so much time trying to figure out stuff just ourselves, because we might work by ourselves, or, everyone else is pretty busy, or, you don't know who to reach out to. I think it's important to speak to other OTs and find out if they've had any experience of this and what they would suggest, or, because a few heads are better than one when it comes to kind of like ideas and things like that. Also, again, speaking to your equipment supplier too, because no doubt they've experienced many people resistant to using kind of manual handling aids and things like that. Also speaking to the client too, if you're able to, like, find out what it is that that they're, so reluctant about. It might be something quite small that can actually be rectified, or, perhaps you're right. Perhaps they're in a hygiene sling and they feel really like they're going to slip out of it. And that's why they don't want to use it. But we're not to know unless we ask them. So I think that would be your first port of call, is trying to figure out why don't they want to use it, and then trying to go from there, and then trying to come up with a solution from there. Yeah.
I think that's great advice, because it could have been even just one previous bad experience.
Yeah, and you know what, we actually have that a lot with air alternating mattresses as well, because people have been in hospital. They've been in hospital, they had a really bad experience with the air alternating mattress they've had in the hospital, and then they just do not want to touch an air alternating mattress. And, oh my goodness, the resistance to them for someone who has like a stage 3 pressure injury or whatever, oh God, it's very hard to kind of work with. But we have had incidences where we've had that much resistance that, that's kind of been out, and we've had to compromise with like a hybrid, mattress. They've been on that mattress. It's not kind of worked out for them. And it's got to a point where they've had to go on an air alternating mattress. And then they've very reluctantly gone onto it. And then actually it's not been as bad as they thought, and they actually quite like it.
Yeah.
And it's just been the experience that they had in the hospital, perhaps that piece of equipment. I mean, in the hospital, right, they're just using standard pieces of equipment. Everyone's on the same thing, and it's important. And it's important as an OT to find a piece of equipment that's suitable for that person. But when you're in an environment like that, you don't really have a choice. So you might have been on that air alternating mattress, and it might just not have been suitable for you. And it was an uncomfortable few nights that you had to sleep on it, because maybe it wasn't they didn't set it right on the pump. Maybe they had it on firm, or maybe this particular mattress, when it was in a upright position, didn't recognize that. So it kind of left you in a big hole, and you were maybe bottoming out a bit under the bum. I've heard that before. But then actually, if they try a different one, it's a different experience. Yeah. So
that's a really good point. Yeah, that's it. I think it's good that therapists will be aware of in a way that it's not just about the product, but it is about how it's used, how it's set up, it being individualized. So being that the right equipment for that specific person, like not grouping it under altering it is bad. But
that's right. Yeah. And I think, again, that's around expectations too for people that come from a normal mattress or some air alternating. They've, because it's called an air alternating mattress, they don't have any experience of that, right? So they just think they're going onto a mattress. I mean, they've heard air on it, in the word, but they don't know how different it is going from a normal mattress onto an air mattress. It would be it feels so different. So generally I can imagine why people don't like it, because they've also not been really forewarned. They've just been like, we're going to get you an air mattress because you got pressure injury. And then they put on an air mattress and they're just supposed to suck it up. Like, it's having those conversations with the person around, like, it's an air alternating mattress. It's actually a system. It feels very different to a normal mattress. Like, these are the things that you might feel, and these are the reasons why. And, just kind of preempting the situation. Yeah. So I think that's important too, especially with things that deal particularly with comfort, which mattresses do.
That's a really, really good point. Thank you so much for your insight. We'll end our part 3 on manual handling, and we'll go over onto our part 4, which will be how to set up yourself for success for a successful trial.